of the Weekend with Wisdom webinar series that has started since yesterday. As you know, this is being organized by Indica Yoga platform. Indica Yoga is a part of Indic Academy, and as a platform, it aspires to offer authentic, immersive, and transformative yoga programs, courses, and experiences across the world. So we have a lineup of activities, events, programs, and courses that are going on. And this is one such important event that has been organized on the occasion of Gita Jayanti. Gita Jayanti falls on the the Margashirsha Shuddha Ekadashi. On this year, it is on 25th December, coincidentally on the day of Christmas too. So on that occasion, we are having this webinar series, Weekend with Wisdom, focusing on the yogas of the Gita. And in order to lead this 3-day webinar series, we have Swami Chidanandaji. Most of you are familiar with Swami Chidanandaji. Swagatam, Swamiji. So we will take the pleasure of introducing him once again. And for this, I request my colleague and a dear friend, Sri Datta Prasad ji, to introduce Swamiji. He has known Swamiji for a long time and has also worked with him. Sri Datta Prasad ji is currently the coordinator of Indica Yoga and its activities. And more than a decade, he has served in many ashrams and in close proximity to many senior sadhaks, Swamijis, and across various spectrums of spiritual environment, whether it is J. Krishnamurti Foundation or Shivananda Ashram, or currently associated with Papa Ramdas Ashram. So he has the wealth of association with great saints, Swamijis, sadhaks. So he is our coordinator and also the anchor for today's session. I now request Sri Datta ji to introduce Swami Chidanand ji. Over to you, Datta. Namaste.
Vinay Chandraji, Namaste Swamiji. It's been a very privilege to introduce you today. Swami Chidanandji has been a Vedantic teacher and a speaker on human values for more than decades. After he served for 5 years as the resident Vedanta teacher in St. John's, California in the mid-1990s, his work has been mostly in India and US. Since 2016, Swamiji is head of Powai Forum, a non-profit organization that disseminates philosophical and spiritual knowledge with special coverage of Indian ethos. Numerous talks by him are on YouTube at Powai channel. Swamiji is the author of 7 books. He is specifically known for his presentation on Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. Hailing from Udupi district in Karnataka, he has been living in Solan, Himachal Pradesh since 2013. He had began his career in electronics engineering with a BE from Mysore University and MTech from IIT Madras. Then he served Chinmaya Mission, the organization of Swami Chinmayanandji, for 18 years and the foundation of Krishnamurti for 10 years. So on behalf of all the audience and from Indica Yoga, Swamiji, I welcome you heartedly for today's session on Karma Yoga. Over to you, Swamiji. Thank you.
Thank you, Datta Prasad. Thank you, Vinaya Chandra. I am happy to present some thoughts on Karma Yoga, this second evening of the 3-evening series going by India time. In the Mahabharata, there is a well-known story where someone called Kaushika does tapas, austerities, in the forest, gets certain supernatural powers, and he takes a break from his meditation, comes to the nearest town and stands before a house, asks for bhiksha, food. Once, twice, 3 times, he says, Bhavati bhiksham dehi, that traditional way of asking for alms. There was no response, and this Kaushika gets angry. Once, a day before this day actually, In the forest, when he got angry and looked at a crow, that crow had turned to ashes. That was one of the supernatural powers that he had. And here now, standing before the entrance of a humble house, he again gets angry. Why is the lady of the house not coming out quickly and giving me some food? Does she think that I am some ordinary person? I am an ascetic with powers. That was his thinking. But as he gets angry and more angry, from deep inside the house, there is a voice, the voice of no other than the lady of the house. Oh, Kaushika, do not get angry. I am not the crow in the forest. Kaushika is shocked. How did this lady come to know that I had burnt a crow just by an angry glance? That story finally goes to several teachings, and above all, it establishes a spiritual truth. More than the hard austerities that Kaushika had performed in the forest, sitting below a tree, closing his eyes, and maybe reciting some mantra for a long time, this lady, by just performing her work, by doing her duty with devotion, with no selfishness, she had gained greater powers. She had gained a greater spiritual elevation. And that is our topic this evening, Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga, please note, is not doing a lot of karma. Suppose somebody from early morning till late evening is going around doing this, doing that, plenty of work, quantity or number of hours, and we say, hey, look at how much he does. He is a karma yogi. Wait a minute. It's not the quantity, it's not the number of hours. Though true karma yogis are never lazy, they will be putting in substantial amount of work, understood by others or not noticed by others. But certainly, a yogi of any of the disciplines will have no room for laziness. That's a different matter. But to equate number of hours of work with karma yoga is an error. Then what is karma yoga? That is where I bring out the first authentic quote from the Gita in the second chapter, 50th verse. Sri Krishna gives one of the definitions of karma yoga. Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. Literally taken, what it means is yoga in the present context, karma yoga, is a certain special skill in all that we do. Kaushala. However, by context, it is not skill in the sense of doing something fast or efficiently or in terms of an outward perfection. Adi Shankara, in his commentary, makes it extremely clear. He says, this Kaushala, which you may translate as dexterity, as skill, this Kaushala is not an outer skill, but it is a certain skill born of the state of mind with which you do your work. And what is so special about that state of mind? He uses these words to translate. Sri Shankaracharya says, it is that skill, that way of doing things where actions which usually bind us do not do so. That calls for an explanation. What kind of actions bind us? First of all, what is meant by binding? Very simple, we shall clarify this point. Binding means leaving behind agitations or even pride sometimes. Pride, hurt, shame, guilt. These days in modern technology, you have an expression GPS. It means geosynchronous positioning system. But just for the fun of it, in the present context of Karma Yoga, suppose we are not doing Karma Yoga, we will be filled with GPS, where GPS means guilt, pride, and shame, and many more negativities. That is bondage. You and I do things, and when we are not appreciated, we are in jitters. We are sore with people who did not even say one thank you, right? Or when people praise us, it gets into our head. We feel on top of the world. So, shame or regret or guilt or pride, many reactions arise in our mind, and that is what builds the ego further and further. So, Shankaracharya is so precise. Karma Yoga is a state of mind with which the actions we do not bind us. We move on with light-heartedness. If criticism comes towards us, we understand and we check, oh, really, did I do something wrong? We may check. Not that we are deaf or we are insensitive, but we don't take it to the heart to the extent of feeling low. We don't shrink with criticism. We don't swell with pride when people praise us. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. Now, it is well known that in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna points to Karma Yoga at many places. When in India, during the time of Sri Morarji Desai as the Prime Minister, a postage stamp was released on Bhagavad Gita, and a few words from the Gita were also found on the postage stamp, in addition to the very well known chariot, Krishna and Arjuna, that picture. The words that were written were Karmani eva adhikaraha te. That is the most well known pointer to Karma Yoga. When we concern ourselves with doing our duty in the best possible manner without becoming dependent on reward, on praise, and so on. We do have a certain goal, we do have a certain target, we do things with some purpose, all that is fine, but I carefully use the word dependence. Suppose our purpose is fulfilled, we reached our goal, we got the intended or sought for results. We are, of course, happy, but that happiness is not to the extent of becoming proud or thinking we are superior to others and so on. There is a difference. Focusing or emphasizing giving rather than receiving is the hallmark of Karma Yoga. Karmani eva adhikaraha ma phaleshu implies that you and I have to work with the understanding our job is to do things, do our duty very well. John F. Kennedy, in his famous speech, expressed Karma Yoga in the 60s. He said to Americans, ask not what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for the country. That is a restatement of Karma Yoga in Bhagavad Gita. So this karmanyevadhikaraste mafaleshu kadachana is second chapter, 47th verse, one of the most quoted shlokas of Bhagavad Gita. Mahatma Gandhi was deeply touched by this wisdom of doing our duty without getting attached, meaning without becoming dependent on the results. Please see the distinction. You keep results in mind, but for some reason, many times out of your control, the results that you desired do not come by, you will not lose heart, you will not fret and fume, you will not get angry with people. Rather, keeping inner calm, you see why you went wrong or why the whole thing went wrong, and objectively take steps to do it better the next time. Gandhi called it anasakti because attachment to the results of action is called phala asakti. Asakti is attachment, phala is the result. Where there is no such insistence, no such emotional dependence on our winning, our celebrating, our stealing the limelight, our becoming well known, our name coming in the newspaper the next day, and so on. Where there is no such dependence, there is anasakti. Mahatma Gandhi's commentary on Bhagavad Gita has been titled Anasakti Yoga. Therefore, not just in third chapter, which is called Karma Yoga, but starting from the second till the 18th, everywhere there are shlokas, phrases, sentences expressing Karma Yoga. For example, in the fifth chapter, there is a very crisp summary shloka. Yuktaha phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim ayuktah kamakarena phale sakto nibadhyate. Yuktah karma phalam tyaktva. The yogi, the well-integrated person, a person of emotional maturity, does his or her work without dependence on success, on favorable results. And that outlook, that state of mind blesses him with shanti, with peace. Ayuktaha, those of us who are not integrated, who have certain psychological disorder, because to carry selfish motives is in fact a kind of disorder. When you take a cup of, let's say, a drink, as when you get it near your mouth, if you get a little bad smell, you put it down. Why is this drink smelling foul? Likewise, when we do our duty, if we have the eyes to see, the least amount of selfish agenda would be like a bad smell, would be like a foul smell. The verse number 12 of chapter 5, which I just now recited, says, someone of emotional maturity learns this skill of doing everything while maintaining inner detachment and gets peace, shanti. Ayuktaha, the disorderly person, phale saktaha nibadhyate. This to me is one of the excellent summaries of Karma Yoga. Chapter 6 begins with the two words anashritaha, one, karma phalam. Open chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, the very first verse, anashrita karma phalam. That's how it begins. Karma phalam anashritaha. Elsewhere it is anasaktaha, here it is anashritaha. Ashrita or asakta all point to the same. What happens is when one is not attached to karma phala, that person, that first shloka says, Karyam karma karoti yaha sasannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na chakriyaha. 6.1. Call him yogi, call him sannyasi, call him with some other word which carries respect on a spiritual scale. The essence of it all is a certain state of mind where you don't depend on name or fame or recognition, etc. Inwardly. Outwardly, if it is unfair that you did something and people did not thank you, outwardly you may do something to let them know that this is not fair. Or it is not you, let us say, your daughter sang or danced or did very well academically. And the school, knowing well your daughter did so well, gives the prize to some other students. So as a parent, you may go meet the principal. Karma Yoga never says keep quiet and shut your eyes to injustice. No. You may go to the principal and you may say, look, my daughter actually sang so well and nowhere her name is mentioned. Why is that? So you may even protest, you may even express a certain concern. All that is outwardly, but inwardly you say to the Lord of your heart, Sri Krishna, it is your will. I accept your will. However, I do what is possible at my hands. Inwardly, I am detached. Don't tell the principal, actually, it doesn't matter to me whether you listen to me or not, but I am doing my duty. That would be foolish. Don't speak to the principal as though you are concerned, as though it matters a lot whether your daughter gets recognized or not. But inwardly, there is a wisdom. See, spiritual wisdom is in our heart, it overrides our behavior, and one knows in one's heart whether one is really concerned or one is doing it as the right thing to do. To go to the principal and lodge a complaint is the right thing to do. Karma Yoga doesn't prevent you from fighting injustice or working towards some noble cause and so on. So, what else can be said about Karma Yoga? Is it about letting go of our attachment to results? That's all. Well, that also covers everything, but it has implications. What are the implications? Go to second chapter again. In the 48th verse, some facets of Karma Yoga are beautifully expressed. Yogastaha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Sri Krishna says, do all your work stationed in yoga. Don't be stationed in bhoga or roga. Bhoga is we are so pleasure centered and we are doing our duty, but our heart is in when is the lunch time, when is the tea time, when is some sweet going to be served, or when am I going to get a promotion, and so on. That would be bhogastha or rogastha if you are having a sick mind, jealous of somebody who got promotion, who got a raise, jealous or sore with somebody else whom people are praising and nobody is praising us, then that is a manoroga. There could be physical roga also. So that would be rogastha, not rogastha, not bhogastha, but yogastha kuru karmani. And be anchored in a certain union with the divine. Yoga means union. And it is said, Sangam Tyaktva. This right away is a second dimension. Earlier it was said, don't be attached to the fruit, the result. Here, the implication is don't be attached to the work itself, in the sense, don't say, I only should be given this work. This work should not be given to anybody else. Suppose it is something that you value a lot, something doing which you feel great. Now you have done it for some time, and now let us say if it is work environment, the boss, some higher officer, assigns that project to another person, asks you to do something else. If you say, no, don't take away that work from me, give that work, let that work be with me only. I should be doing this work only, and I don't want to do that work. So, attachment, Sangha. All through the Gita, much is said about the need for overcoming various likes and dislikes. Nowadays, people are attached to gadgets, their mobiles, their laptops, to the internet, to all of them are necessary in modern life. But when somebody is attached to them, one is doing that only all the time. There are some people who don't even take bath in the morning, they don't even eat proper food. They are with their iPad or laptop and some junk food they eat in between, and they take bath at some time without any proper order. So when you do some work, it may be work, it need not be entertainment. Even when you are doing work that jeopardizes your daily life's order, the balance in daily life. No exercise for 10 days because day and night you have been with your computer. Then that is Sangha. More than, don't say pressure of work. Pressure of work is one side of the story. The other side is you are very attached. You have made working with the computer a kind of a psychological comfort zone. You feel at peace there. It's a contradiction in terms, though your eyes may be burning and your posture might turn into a question mark. You are sitting with a curve. You don't even sit straight and do your work. So, in a way, you are uncomfortable, but psychologically, some kick it gives you. So, Sangam Tyaktva, and then Siddhi Asiddhyoho Samo Bhutva, Kuru Karma is implied. This is verse number 1248. And at the end of that shloka, there is a punchline. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. To stay the same, to stay equal in success or failure, that is yoga. Not easy. We generally feel so good when we succeed, and we really get depressed when we fail. Not to feel proud or depressed, taking note of what has happened, but move on. Moving on with equanimity is yoga. How is that possible? All these are impossible ideals. If you say, Sri Krishna gives to us tips on how it is possible. In chapter 5, you have a very famous shloka with a very famous illustration. The illustration of the lotus leaf, which does not get wet. The shloka begins, Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate nasa papena padmapatramivambhasa. Padmapatram, like the lotus leaf, does not get wet. I would add, even if you take some water and throw upon it, the water just becomes bubbles and just run away. Those bubbles run away. The leaf remains dry. That is the nature of the lotus leaf. Like that, even when we are bombarded with criticism or rejection or the desired response from her or him doesn't come towards us, if we can remain equal, and the tip is given. What is the way? Brahmani Adaya. Think of you are doing your work for pleasing God. Like a son who is full of devotion, full of love for his mother. There was a son in Kolkata, Sri Ramakrishna says, who would go to his village, which is maybe in those days by some transport an hour away. And every weekend when he goes to his village, he carries something that his mother would love to have. And just to take that and give it to his mother was such a delight for him. So he buys that, carries it. For what? For whose pleasure? For his mother's pleasure. Sri Ramakrishna also mentions another funny case. A mother wrote a postcard those days to that or another son, let us say, another story. And she wrote, this Saturday when you come home, get these items, these fruits, these spices, these some material from the grocery shops in Kolkata, big city. And this son, this is a different example, takes the postcard, reads, oh, my mother has written a letter to me. She wants all these things. How wonderful. I love her. And he, holding that postcard, he dances, then places at the altar where he has some Shivalinga or some such thing. But the funny part of that story is at the end of it all, he completely forgets buying those things and goes home on Saturday to the village. And when the mother asks him, did you get those items which I wrote in a postcard and sent to you? Oh, he says, that is a sad case. You and I should not do it. But someone who truly cares for mother or father, wife or husband, son or daughter, or country or company, somebody who cares for others, who truly loves them, extends or stretches himself. So, Brahmani Adaya literally is do things so that God is pleased with you. Therefore, Bhakti, which is going to be our topic tomorrow, is intimately connected with Karma Yoga. Some people may not visualize God in a traditional way, but still a certain sense of a higher law, a higher value makes them do things selflessly. They actually work for the sake of that higher law, the higher truth. Ramana Maharshi, in his Upadesha Sara, summarizes Karma Yoga in a single short shloka. Ishwararpitam nechayakritam chittashodhakam muktisadhakam. Ishwararpitam, when we learn to do everything as an offering to God, not something to please our ego, when this I, me, and my are put aside, and we do things to the best of our ability for the pleasure of God. Anena maya kritena or kriyamanena karmana Bhagavan Sarvatmakaha Shri Parameshwaraha Priyatam. There is a sankalpa at the beginning of some rituals. So going by that spirit. So Ishwararpana, that is 5th chapter, 10th verse, giving the illustration of the lotus leaf. Now Vinoba Bhave perhaps wrote one of the, I should say he wrote a commentary which is perhaps one of the simplest, most lucid ones. Anybody among you hasn't studied any commentary on Gita, I suggest begin with the commentary by Vinoba Bhave. Those were actually lectures that he had delivered when the British had put him in jail. So in the prison, on every Sunday, he gave some talks on Gita. They were then made into a book, Talks on Gita by Vinoba. Over there, he throws light on the nature of karma yoga. He says, just as to wash a dirty cloth, you need two things. You need water, you need soap. If you just have the best soap from the town, but no water, how can you wash clothes? And you have plenty of water, but no soap, then also you can't do a good job. You need water and soap. Likewise, he says, Karma Yoga involves, you know what? Choosing Swadharma. Don't try to do some fancy work. Again and again, examine what is that field of work where I can serve people to the to a higher degree? Where can I give maximum service? And typically, it is that for which your personality is designed. Call it nature. Let's say God. God has made all of us in such a way, and we are good in different things. Somebody good in business may not be good in teaching. Somebody good in teaching may not be good in technology. Somebody good in technology may not be good in talking about it, communication. Somebody is good in PR work, public relations. Somebody else is good in cooking, singing, dancing. There are countless fields, and all of us know that we are very good in this. Where we are good, we should take this or take that as the domain of service, the field of service. Then that would be the first part. Call it water. You got water. You chose the right field of activity, right way of living, right way of behaving, in line with, in tune with the personality that you have. Second comes the soap, water and soap. The soap is no other than having chosen the right field, the matter doesn't end there. Things are not so simple. You are good at teaching, so you became a teacher at a school. Now my life will be karma yoga. It won't be. The challenge is in doing your work with no selfishness. Somebody who is excellent in teaching may become a teacher at a high school or at a college, anywhere. But unless he or she is very careful, pretty soon that person might be trying to become popular, trying to get more and more income, more and more recognition from the college, from the university, and everything. He is trying to boost his ego. He's very good in teaching, but being good in teaching or placing himself in the field where skill wise, temperament wise he belongs is not the end of the story. Extremely careful he has to be. Day in and day out, he must discharge his duties without expecting any selfish returns, any returns in a selfish manner. So, water and soap, the right field, and having gone into that right field, acting in the right manner. Lord Krishna at many places says, all this will fall in place if you are devoted to God. At the end of the 11th chapter, Sri Krishna says, Mat karma krit mat paramo mad bhaktaha sanga varjitaha nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yassamameti pandava. That is 55th verse of the 11th chapter. And for us, for the present context, the first word is enough. Mat karma krit. Mat karma is mama karma. Anybody who is doing my work. What do you mean by my work, God's work? We don't know what God's work is. Well, it's not that confusing or difficult. God is like the father of all of us. God is in everybody. Therefore, God's work is work that brings benefit to everybody or that brings benefit to others. And this God's work is in sharp contrast with Swartha. My glory, my increased income, my name, my fame, my comfort, my physical pleasure, my psychological gratification, blah, blah. In this way, if it is all about I, me, and my, that is poles apart from God's work. In God's work, we are not going to be losers. We do things for the good of all, that all may be 100 people or just 2 people, right? In fact, in modern management, you have values in the management context. And one of the well known human values is think win win. Management gurus ask us, think win win. What is win win? If you think I must win and the other person should lose, that is not a very you know, good way to look at things. And if you think others should win and I lose, no, that is not practical. If you think, oh, well, let them also lose, let me also lose. That's called lose lose. Both sides lose. That is, you know, foolishness. So, can we go about a transaction where we too win and they too are happy? Like a simple shopkeeper, he goes to great lengths to keep quality products with very reasonable price. So as he goes ahead with that job, with that business, he his business will prosper. People will say that shop gives quality product and the prices are reasonable. So more and more people will come and do business or buy things from him. He is happy. And because he is running his shop, his business in a very ethical manner, providing to the society, to the customers, quality products at reasonable price, they are happy too. Win-win is the seller is happy, the buyer also is happy. This kind of doing things for the happiness of all who are involved to strive towards that is karma yoga. In fact, Sri Krishna elsewhere calls it yajna. And in the third chapter, there is a powerful shloka. Except for yajna, everything else is a bondage. Yajnarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. Third chapter, probably 10th verse, check out. 3.10 or 9 or 11. Yajnarthat karmanaha anyatra, other than work done in the spirit of yajna. Yajna is this win-win, is this working towards the good of all, in which our own good also is a part. Except for that kind of work, everything else psychologically binds you. Selfishness is like a thorn in our flesh and it goes on paining us. It goes on making us miserable. You got to remove that thorn carefully and throw it far away. Then treat your foot where the thorn had gone into the flesh. Get well soon. If you keep that thorn, if you don't remove it, you will continue to suffer. So is the case with selfishness. Sri Krishna says in the 12th chapter, and over there, he gives several options to Arjuna. He says, Mayi eva mana adatsva, Mayi buddhim niveshaya, and so on. 9th verse or so. Fix your mind, fix your heart, be God conscious all the time. That is not easy. Then he gives a second option. If that is not possible, while you are doing work, offer all your work to God. Another option, if remembrance of God doesn't come easily, practice Abhyasa Yoga. And then fourth option is, if you cannot spontaneously be in remembrance of God, if through practice you are not able to stay in remembrance of God, if you are not able to remember God while doing work, no problem. There's a fourth option. When the work is over and results start coming, at that time, whether the results are favorable or unfavorable, think of God and say, it's all yours. That is Falatyaga. And having said that, in the 12th verse of the 12th chapter, that's what I especially wanted to refer to quote 12.12. Sri Krishna makes an interesting comment that Tyaga, that is Falatyaga, is above everything. It's about meditation, it's about scriptural study, it is about knowledge, it is above. Tyaga is above everything. Tyaga is supreme. And Tyaga, that is letting go of the attachment to results, that gives you instant peace. In these days of instant coffee and instant tea and instant geyser, people have no time. Instantly, you have only 1 minute. Quickly put that powder into some hot milk and stir and a little sugar. Drink coffee, instant coffee, right? So Sri Krishna says, Tyagat Shantihi instantly. He doesn't use an English word. The Sanskrit word for instantly is Anantaram. Anantaram here means without antara. Antara means a time gap. Without a time gap, it is Anantaram. Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasat. Jnanat dhyanam vishishyate. Dhyanat karma phala tyagaha. Tyagat shanti anantaram. Antaram vina. Without any time gap. You know why? Even in meditation, even in puja, even in scriptural study, running through all those hallowed spiritual practices, if there is a spirit of letting go of egoism. Imagine somebody is meditating and thinks, I'm doing so well today. And this way, if I meditate daily, very soon I will be enlightened. I think I'll get enlightened much before my wife gets. In this way, suppose he entertains thoughts about his getting enlightened first, or the other way around also. My mind is wandering. My God, at this rate, I'm wasting my time. Maybe I should not sit at all for meditation. And if this way my mind is not cooperating, I will not get enlightened. And this lady, my wife, she's going way ahead of me. In this way, this kind of, being attached to will I win or will I lose? Will I succeed or will I fail? That is an unnecessary bug. You have to drop that bug. It is a flaw, it is a defect. Can you meditate? Can you pray? Can you do your duty without wasting energy on whether you will succeed or not? That is Falatyaga. If there is a state of mind where there is abandoning that concern, you just concern yourself in the present moment with doing the job well. Then why would you not get Shanti? Tyaga Shanti Anantaram. And thus, Lord Krishna says at many places. But then Arjuna, representing you and me, is not fully satisfied. Even in the 18th chapter, again, he asks, one last time, if I may ask, that is my additional phrase, but that seems to be Arjuna's approach. He says, tell me once more, what is Tyaga? I do hear of giving, giving up or renouncing action. And Sri Krishna makes a very important clarification. He says, there are duties and nobody should let go of one's duties. Yajna dana tapa karma natyajyam at a certain place. And then specifically I am quoting the 6th verse of 18th chapter. Etanyapitu karmani sangam tyaktva falani cha kartavyani. He called those works yajna, dana and tapaha, which is a wonderful expression. For simplification, if you and I look into our heart, introspect, and honestly we examine, and we will find that there are certain things, not because somebody says or some holy book says, our own heart says, this is your duty, this you must do. Then, because you studied some Vedanta, because you attended a satsang and then you got an inspiration. I will now live in, here onward, I will live in ecstatic love of God. With hands raised, I will go Hare Krishna, and so on. Hold on. You might have got inspired during that satsang, during that bhajan, but you may not really have that ripeness. Till you get that ripeness, till you get that maturity, day in and day out, do what your duty is. Don't do unnecessary things. Don't do things which are coming up because of some likes and dislikes, because of some reaction, because of some fancy attraction, and so on. You go on the internet to do some work, and the internet suggests, here is a song and there is a dance and here is some entertainment. If you leave your work and pursue that dance or music, definitely Gita says, please don't do that. That tyaga you do. Please do tyaga of that kamya karma, entertainment, fun and so on. But the duty on the computer, on the net that you are all set to do that carefully, even if you dislike. We scholars also have to sometimes write an article and our mind says, who will write this article? Having opened the laptop, our mind says, now don't write article. Why not see an old Bollywood movie instead? So I am giving the contrast. The scripture says, who was that who a while ago said, I'll give up everything and dance on the streets of my town like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Who is that person? And now who is it who wants to see a Bollywood movie? Then you realize, yeah, that time I felt that I was a Mahavirakta. I am just 2 inches behind Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just 10 feet behind Vivek. I felt like that really I still have attachment to pleasure and so on. So when you thus actually discover that you have a long way to go, the required maturity, whether you like it or not, hasn't come about in you. If not attachment to pleasure, ice cream or a Bollywood movie, these are pleasure. Sometimes people are attached to sending a message to everyone who one is, some kind of egoism. Sometimes you and I are living in constant reaction. Reaction means somebody insulted us and we are grinding our teeth. I was all set to go for sannyasa, but after this man insulted me, I have postponed my sannyasa plan. I will teach this man a lesson. And after teaching him a lesson that he will never forget in the rest of his life, I will go take sannyas. In this way, a man thinks, or a woman, that's called reaction. Many people choose a profession also out of reaction. There was somebody who was put to a lot of injustice. Then that girl decided, I'm going to become a police officer, young high school girl. I will become a police officer and I will prevent such injustice from taking place to other girls in my village. Also, I will show to these police people who did not listen to us, I will go and become a senior police officer by hard work. Well, so there's some nobility in what she plans to do, but that kind of reaction coming up could many times be ill placed. For example, she may not have the actual temperament, have the knowledge, have the competence to be a good police officer. She need to double check. The idea of working for justice is fine. So Sri Krishna talks about, at the end I wish to quote, one should not hurry up. One should one should hurry up in letting go of unnecessary actions, where time wasters. All of us in our daily life do things which waste our time. Renouncing. Begin with renunciation of all those unnecessary activities. Don't begin with renouncing duties. So 18th chapter, 6th shloka has an emphatic expression, kartavyani. Work has to be done. Duties should never be given up. Then what is the emphasis on renouncing? Renounce your attachment to the fruit. Renounce your attachment to the work itself. That means do it with a silent mind, with a loving mind, with a mind free of reactions. Kartavyani. So all our life we must be doing this work, work and work, secular work or religious work. Well, don't think like that all my life and so on. No, presently do it. And when you are actually poised, when you are in a position to let go of duty also and go for Brahma Chintana, the meditative or contemplative life, you will know. You will know when you may say goodbye to duty. Now, where is that said? That is said in many shlokas when you see the interpretation or the right spirit of it. But to quickly mention, wherever Sri Krishna has emphatically said, karma is not to be given up. You only give up attachment to fruit. Karma na tyajyam, karmani ya asakti hai asti, ya falasakti hai asti. Sa asakti tyajya. That is the upshot. Wherever such teaching comes, see, Sri Shankaracharya says, this is said considering the mindset of majority. 99.9% of people on the earth are not actually mature enough to take sannyasa. If they take sannyasa, they will not be living really the life of sannyasa. They will be attached to a few things, even in the so-called sannyasa way of living. The reality about their life will be their attachments will not leave them just by wearing orange robes or some such thing. Then what does it mean? Sri Shankaracharya, I must do justice to the topic, makes a case for renouncing the so-called duties also, yajna, dana and tapaha, these three. Yajna, dana, tapa, karma, natyajyam, says Sri Krishna. Shankaracharya says this is said for that overwhelming majority of people, but a small number of people, which could be us also, we could grow to that stature. A small number of people who have the Viveka and Vairagya, or in the language of Bhakti, who have intense devotion to God, not only are permitted to let go of so-called duties and walk the path of study and meditation and so on. They are not only permitted, they are advised actually. Gita directly also says, I need not resort to Adi Shankara. In chapter 6, in the 4th or 5th verse, you have, or maybe before that, Aru Rukshor Maner Yogam Karma Karanam Uchyate Yoga Rudasya Tasya Eva Shamak Karanam Uchyate. There is a shloka, probably third. Someone who is yet to attain their Vairagya, yoga means Vairagya. The word yoga has many meanings. That shloka which says, Aru Rukshor Munehe Yogam, Yogam Arodum Ichoho, one who is all set to, or one who is striving to reach a level of yoga, that means intense detachment. Karma is the sadhana. Karma karana muchyate, karma yoga. But yoga arudasya, suppose you and I have been performing our duties, praying, meditating, what you call doing puja, we are living a conscientious life rather than a careless life. We are living with greater and greater care. A point comes when there is actually great vairagya in us. We know it when it is inside us. That is called yoga aruda. Same person who, when he didn't have vairagya, should not give up karma. And the same person, upon gaining the necessary detachment, ought to say goodbye to karma. Shamak karana muchyate. So Adi Shankara in his commentaries elaborately explains this, and there is a beautiful science about it. Last but not the least, this teaching that it is good for you to let go of selfishness, let go of your attachment to result, let go of your attachment to even what you are doing. Do it all as an offering to God is actually based in a deep spiritual truth, which all are unable to see. What is the deep spiritual truth? That is also given in the Gita. In chapter 11, verse number 33, Sri Krishna makes a statement which is unbelievable. When you read that, I would not be surprised if your mouth opens wide. Huh? Did Sri Krishna say this? Now, what is the statement in 11.33? Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, dear, let me tell you, I have already killed all those people who need to die, who are going to die. I have already killed them. Your shooting arrows, etc., is all a show. But you must do what is expected of you. The punchline in 11.33 is Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. You just be an instrument in my hands. It is for your good, for your well-being, that you do these things. What is meant is whether you do it or not, since I have willed it, I have already decided. If you don't do, it will be done. But if you do, you get the benefit of rising in your consciousness. You get elevated. So Chitta Shuddhi, purification of mind, will be the reward. Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. You are not really doing, I am doing it, says Sri Krishna. But there is, as the expression came in 3rd chapter, 3.27, Ahankara vimudhatma karta ahamiti manyate. Somebody deluded, somebody with the spiritual ignorance has that notion, which looks very real, but it's a notion I am the doer. God is the doer. We are not the doers at all. Therefore, this great advice, do work with no attachment to fruit. The fruits do work with no attachment to work, the work itself. This whole teaching is anchored in the deeper truth that actually we are not the doers and actually the results don't belong to us. We actually, on personality level, are instruments in the hands of God. On a deeper level, we are the witnessing consciousness, pure consciousness. Therefore, friends, in summary, Karma Yoga is doing our duty, which involves selecting right action, right field of action, then doing the duty in that well chosen field of action without any trace of selfishness, without any trace of egoism. And that is made possible by dedication and devotion to a higher understanding. If anybody is allergic to God and some higher power, allergic meaning some people say this is all conceptual. I want something factual, not conceptual. All right. In place of God or Brahma, or what is it? Brahmani Adaya, okay, you say, offer all your work to a higher understanding. For it is lower understanding to indulge in thoughts of once this project is over, I'm going to be very famous. Once this business succeeds, I will be so rich. And then everybody knows my worth. This is a lower understanding. I, me, and my. The higher understanding is marked by if all this goes well, I will have the satisfaction of having done my duty and I will find peace. To seek peace, to seek bliss, to seek unalloyed happiness is never unspiritual. But to seek fame and name, to score a victory over somebody, to teach a lesson to somebody, that is all egoism. So we need to distinguish between what is well aligned with spirituality, the science of spirituality, and what is not aligned, misaligned. That is Karma Yoga. Karmani eva adhikaraste. You and I should be devoted to doing our duty and doing it very well in a spiritual way. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namaste, Swamiji. Thank you very much.
Namaste, Vinay Chandra.
Yeah. I think we'll await people's questions. So we have just opened the chat box so they can type in their questions. And as we await, I'll take a minute or two just to announce various events happening from Indica Yoga. So I'd like to let all our participants know that you could stay tuned with us to connect with us and follow our activities through our website, that is indicayoga.com. You can also connect us on our Facebook, that is same as Indica Yoga. And you could also connect with all our previous events through the videos which have been recorded of all the sessions that have taken place so far. So we nearly have about a couple of 100 videos of various sessions, and they're all available on Indica Yoga YouTube channel. We will shortly be presenting the links to all these. So Indica Yoga YouTube channel, Indica Yoga Facebook page, and also our website where you can subscribe to our events and be updated of all the events that are happening. And I also would like to let you know that we have two interesting events coming up. One is uh, a course that we are starting in the month of January. It is Yoga 360. It intends to offer a 360-degree perspective of yoga as a philosophy, as a science, and as a practice. So this will be taught by Srimati Nritya Jagannathan of Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. She is the director of Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram Institute of Yoga Studies. So she will be the lead facilitator, and along with her, we have a couple of other teachers too on this course. The details of the course will also be presented here in the chat box, and we will also be sending details about this course. And another interesting event which is in the pipeline is Bhakti Immersion Retreat that is happening on 23rd and 24th of next month. It's a 2-day residential retreat happening in Bangalore. So tomorrow we'll be hearing about Bhakti, the way Swamiji brought in. I think I found it to be extraordinarily pleasant and fascinating that he connected yesterday Jnana with Bhakti and today Karma with Bhakti. So both leading towards Bhakti, what we will be exploring tomorrow. And we have a special immersion event, a retreat next month on 22nd to 24th, a 2-day residential retreat on Bhakti Immersion Retreat through Gita, Sutra, and Sankirtan. So this will be led by Yogashri Raghuramji. So you can connect with us and also get to know about the details of it. And with this, I'll come back to Swamiji. We have a host of questions at this point. So we'll start taking the questions. So before I start the question from here, Swamiji, I would like to request your insights on two important things which are very closely connected with Karma Yoga. You mentioned it, the concept of yajna, the way Sri Krishna brings it in, especially in the third chapter. You mentioned about how if performed in the yagnik way, or what happens if it's not performed in the yagnik way. So yajna is such an important concept. Could I request you to elaborate a little more about the significance of the concept of yajna in the backdrop of Karma Yoga that we are discussing?
Yes, yes. So the first verse to touch upon that whole vision is the one I quoted, where the word yajna has two meanings. Yajno vai Vishnuhu. There is a Vedic statement. Yajna is a name of Lord Vishnu. In Vishnu Sahasranama, Yajna ijyo mahejyascha, there is a shloka. So Lord Vishnu is called Yajna. So when you take that shloka, 3.10, first it means except for what you do for Vishnu, all other actions bind you. And the Vedanta philosophy is so, broad-minded. It gives us the liberty to interpret yajna beyond the description of a particular God form. Vishnu is a God form. Shiva is another God form. It permits us, the wisdom of Vedanta permits us to take it beyond any God form. Therefore, now coming to the crux of the matter, yajna is totality. Yajna is all, in contrast to the little ego individuality. If we are caught in our own personal agendas, that individual obsession is bondage. If we release ourselves from our obsession with I, me, and my, and work for the good of a larger scenario, I am calling it larger scenario. Sometimes it could be for the family, sometimes it could be for the town, it could be for the country, it could be for all humanity, whatever way. Then what happens is it doesn't bind anymore. Finally, a lot can be said about yajna. Finally, in that chapter, it is made clear we please the gods, devatas, not Vishnu, Brahma, etc., but devatas in heaven. Devan bhavayatanena, te devaha bhavayantuvaha. Right? And that also has a hidden meaning. Swami Chinmayanandaji describes it beautifully in his lectures and in the book he wrote on Holy Gita. that the devatas are not necessarily up in the heaven, but environment is devatas. Land is devata. Bhudevi we call. Vayu Deva, Surya Deva. So if we care for nature, then nature cares for us. Therefore, yajna has in its meaning so many ramifications. So a businessman can look at his customers as the devatas. Be good to the customers, and the customers will be good to you. And parasparam bhavayantaha shreya paramavapsyata. The teachers should be good to their students, giving them excellent knowledge, going an extra mile to ensure that they get right knowledge, right? And then they also happy. Both rise in spiritual should suffice for this question answer. Are there other questions now? Have they come up?
Yes, Swamiji. Yes. Uh, so there was also this uh, dimension to Karma Yoga, no, about Loka Sangraha. So how do you look at it?
Correct. Thank you for saying it. I wanted to say this in the lecture proper. Sri Krishna says people like King Janaka, though they had lot of spiritual wisdom, they did not walk away. They kept doing work. And then in that context, he says, he adds a line, Arjuna, look at Janaka and others, and Arjuna, for Loka Sangraha at least, stay put in karma. Loka Sangraha is service to humanity, service to the society. For in Arjuna's specific context also, his fighting the war would be a service to the society. Otherwise, imagine Pandavas suppose lose. That would be terrible. Pandavas lose, the Kauravas win, Pandavas are driven away, let us say, or they are killed. Arjuna could be being the most eminent warrior. Likewise, in the life of you and me too, if we look at some good that we might be doing to the family, to the society, to the company, etc., that would be Loka Sangraha. Again, in contrast to just Swartha. Loka Sangraha is in contrast to Swartha. Swartha is my personal comfort and well-being.
So there is one question related to this by Guru Prasad ji. Okay. You were referring to the win-win situation.
Yes.
So if this is the attitude with which we involve, then yes, would it still not be selfishness because I need to win at the end of the day? So would you consider that also as selfishness?
No, it is from number one in relation to the usual tendency. I want to win. I don't care what happens to others. In relation to that, it is already letting go of that selfish emphasis. Now coming to another level, even if I come to win-win, I am emphasizing on my winning also. Though there is a little swartha there if it is argued, we say no. In this win-win, actually the whole outcome is good for everybody. I happen to be one of all. Therefore, even if you call it swartha, that is not really swartha. It is actually what is essential. If somebody says, I want to have a meal every day, we never call it swartha. If somebody says, my wife and I and our two children need a roof over our head, nobody says that is swartha. So, depending on our situation in life, our needs, our requirements could be sometimes high or low. What educated, well-placed people would want might appear luxurious to a poor man, but in their eyes, that is part of their that standard of living. There's nothing wrong in it. A poor man, says, all I want is 2 meals a day. And a rich businessman says, all I want is permission to open some more shops in 2, 3 other states. I'm now doing in Karnataka. I want to do it in all over South India. There's nothing wrong in that because there is a service element in that. And so everything that one asks for is not Swartha. Swartha is where there is discrimination, there is insensitivity, there is some kind of turning a blind eye to the needs of others and being so obsessed with one's own need. Then only it is Swartha. Otherwise, even if I want a gold chain on my birthday, it need not be Swartha.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Swamiji, because especially in this age and day, we
Yeah,
have many isms,
yeah, yeah.
and each one has a very strong perspective and
Correct,
almost negates the other.
correct.
So, in that, how do we have this balance? I think this perspective is very helpful in that context.
Hmm.
Moving further, it's a completely different question, but it is something that you touched upon.
Yeah.
This is from Hargopal Matsirajaji, who is asking,
Uh-huh.
uh, how do you evaluate the nature of singing and dancing in ecstasy, like the way Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, especially in the backdrop of Karma Yoga that we are discussing? Is it something wrong or not advisable? How would you look into it? Or what
Yes.
place do they have in their own realms?
Singing, dancing, the Sankirtana is a valid spiritual exercise. So it suits a lot of people. Therefore, if Hare Krishna or some other organizations are prescribing it, they are not wrong. But if they say this is what every human being should do, this is the only way, I'm afraid they are wrong. There are a lot of human beings to whom that kirtana, that dancing, etc., do not suit. Somehow their temperament made, God has made them differently. No wonder in today's world there is whole Buddhism, Jainism, and so on, where there is no such, uh, there is no God at all in Buddhism and Jainism. And even in Western countries, a lot of people are embracing Buddhism, mindfulness, etc., which is also fine. So, Kirtana, etc., is a valid path which suits a number of people. For in that process, they are able to see that their selfish fancies were so foolish, and they are able to drop that selfishness.
I think this echoes the beauty of the Indian thought or the Eastern thought, which says there is no one way, one uniform way for
One,
everyone. As we
correct.
have the saying in Sanskrit, pinde pinde matir bhinna. The thought
Yes.
or the mind or the emotion is
Yeah.
different in each human being. So each one of us have our own ways
Yeah.
of reconnecting with the higher self. So I think
Yeah. Yeah.
your thought really brought it out beautifully, Swami. I will
Yeah.
next move on to a comment as well as a question by Katyayani Surya Devarji, who was also there yesterday and had shared a lovely comment. So they say, thank you,
Oh, yes.
Swamiji, for another beautiful gift toward inner liberation. What difference does it make when we do our duties with loving detachment to the result and work itself, if not
Hmm.
necessarily as an offering to God, unknown or not experienced, but to one's own conscious self at a higher level? Does
Certainly.
it make a difference at all?
It makes no difference. So there are many people. In fact, that's what happens in Buddhism, Jainism, and so on. They do not visualize God, but they do have a lot of teachings where people are advised to do things without attachment, and they adore a state of mind free of desire. So, adoring a state of mind with no selfishness is also a form very akin to adoring Rama or Krishna. So every day I do my work and I visualize a peaceful state of mind, and I have a certain understanding. I can have that peace of mind only if I let go of emphasis or insistence on my personal gain. So it is actually the same discipline. without bringing God or some supreme power into the picture, but you do bring into the picture a certain visualization that there is peace, there is happiness in letting go of selfish desires. So what you visualize is very akin to God, though no name, no form.
Thank you, Swamiji. I have one very interesting question. I'm sure uh, you would be delighted to answer this. This is from Chandrasekhar ji, who has been there as a participant even yesterday also, who's asking, Swamiji, do you get happiness if we understand you, or sad if we just nod our heads? Maybe this would be a question for any speaker, any teacher. Like, what would be, if I have to extend it further, what would be a teacher's attitude to those who listen to him when they just understand him, or they just nod their heads even without understanding? So how do you take it? What difference does it make to you personally and as well as in a larger context?
Correct. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Personally, me or teachers like me in general, see, we are also sadhakas. We are also aspirants on the path. Probably 25 years ago, 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago, I would have been more dejected if nobody came to my program, or people were just nodding, but I could make out that nobody is enjoying. Whereas now, one is growing older also, there is some maturity. Another is we learn. All life we keep learning. So we imbibe, we assimilate the teachings of Gita, over a length of time. Therefore, both personally, someone like me and other teachers, as they evolve, teaching and learning, study and teach, study and teach. That is our sadhana. We do, and life also teaches us many lessons. You know, it's not that only grahasthas are, they have to go through ups and downs. Swamis, anyone, anywhere goes through ups and downs. Imagine a Himalayan Swami, not someone like me who is in cities and so on. A Himalayan Swami in a small cottage, let us say, was receiving some food, some fruits or something every day, some devotees were bringing. And God forbid, one day they suddenly stop and the sadhu doesn't even know where they went. So that is up and down. And after 3 days of starving, maybe, or maybe the sadhu walks to some chatra, there are some places where food is given. 3 days he has to walk and come back. After 3 days, suddenly it may begin again. So no one can live, on air. Everybody needs some support, some kind of basic needs are part of life, and that is enough for the society to, make us happy or disappoint us. So my answer to this question is, like any other human being, we the teachers also do feel happy if our programs go well, and we feel a little jittery if our programs do not go well. But to what extent are those elation or depression, it keeps changing. It becomes less and less, and we are able to just forget also at times. So we are like anybody else. All of us are in the same boat.
Thank you, Swamiji, for that. The clarity, I mean, clarity and transparency with which you presented. Thank you so much. So I'll just take last two questions, and with that we can conclude. And this question is a very specific question, and it refers to one of the profoundest shlokas of the Gita. This is from Bharatji, who is asking, how do you explain this phrase or part of the verse, Nigraha kim karishyati? सदृशं चेष्टते स्वस्याः प्रकृतेर्ज्ञानवानपि प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि निग्रहः किं करिष्यति?
Yeah. So that is only a passing thought. It is only to highlight for the benefit of all other people.
Maybe you can translate it quickly and then explain it. So that would be.
Yeah. Prakrite sadrisham, what is that?
Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha Prakritir Jnanavanapi.
Yeah. Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakritir jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Yes, it's a very wonderful shloka, but that is not the final stand that Sri Krishna takes. It is a passing remark. What he says is, people are very much regulated, driven by Prakriti, by their old tendencies, by their old habits. And therefore, even someone who has read a lot, someone who has Nanavan there means someone who has read a lot, who has read and written books and given lectures, etc., not enlightened. So even those with the vast amount of scholarship also are driven by certain old habits and tendencies. In that context, nigraha kim karishyati. What can self-control do? So he is making that comment just to show that being free from habits, being free from the clutches of old tendencies is extremely difficult. In no way he means it is impossible, but it is a manner of saying. In a manner of saying, what can self-control do? It means self-control is extremely difficult. The same Sri Krishna elsewhere says, right? That asamshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam.
Abhyasena tu kaunteya.
Correct. Grihyate. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. Here he says nigraha kim karishyati, but over there he says grihyate. Mind can be controlled. So that is the statement having more weight. In the light of that, this statement has to be put behind or to the back seat.
I think this is the importance of a teacher, Swamiji, and a parampara to understand which is pradhana and which is gauna, which is the main statement and which is a submissive statement, I think. Yeah. So with this, thank you very much once again. Before I request Dattaji to come in and to thank everyone, I'll request you to share one takeaway message like yesterday. Yesterday, your takeaway message, Xmas. So the need to exercise, meditate, and study has been very well received, and there have been a lot of responses on that. So similarly, if you have one straight practical message out of all that we discussed today, you'd be
I will
grateful
give
for.
one straight, simple message, but that one will have one A and one B. There's two parts. That's a clever way of, combining two. So one A is small victories lead to big victories. So without losing heart, without losing, inspiration, let us day after day try to gain small victories over ourselves. That is, in the present context of Karma Yoga, when old selfish tendency is rising, we can say, I have done this many times. Today, let me not go for the selfish approach. I'm going to help that person and he deserves it. That is enough. I don't want any reward or recognition. He's a deserving person. I'll just help him. And tomorrow, if he forgets me, also fine. As long as I haven't given to an undeserving person who will misuse the help, etc. So some basic checks, but no. So I'm calling that example of a small victory. The 1B is, all this is good to say, how do we actually succeed? The 1B is, in order to make possible 1A, that is very many gestures of service, we must all the time be more watchful on our motives. Keep an eye on your motives. Next time you feel like making a donation, just see, why are you donating here? Yesterday you refused a donation in another context. And then you may become aware of a hidden motive. Here, if I make a donation, tomorrow they may give a job to my daughter. There may be some hidden, or sometimes, you and I have our own preferences. Some good looking person comes and asks for money. We say, oh yeah, sure, here is a check. And somebody in our eyes, because what is good looking, God knows, beauty lies in the eyes that see, the eyes behold. But in our eyes, somebody is not well dressed, not body language is not okay. Then we say, no, we don't give donation to anybody, and we send him away. So when we come forward to help, what was our hidden motive? When we refuse to help, what was our hidden motive? So 1B is be aware of your motives. 1A is even if it is small, do small things every day of the nature of service.
Mm. Thank you very much, Swamiji. So I think this is a very useful, and very a formula which one can easily remember. It's not just the actions, but also keep a tab on the motives behind it.
Correct, correct.
Namaste,
Over to
Swamiji. Thank you, Vinyaji, for taking all the questions and leading Swamiji to answer. Swamiji, we are deeply grateful once again for such a wonderful event of today, where you are sharing on Karma Yoga. I'm sure all of us have deeply benefited by this, and we deeply thank you for this wonderful lucid presentation on Karma Yoga and leading us to various insights. And of course, again, one more capsule for the day. And we thank all the participants for their active participation and leading us to this session. Uh, we thank Swamiji once again. We look forward for you, Swamiji, tomorrow again for the session on Bhakti Yoga, culminating all our 3 days Gita Yagna session on the occasion of Gita Jayanti. Dear participants, we request you all again to join us same time tomorrow at 6 o'clock and be present and come out with your more questions. If you have any questions on the day 1 and day 2, we can also take it up on tomorrow. Tomorrow will be not the last session, but for this weekend with wisdom, we are holding the last session, but we look forward for more such interaction with Swami Chidananji in Indika platform as well. So thank you all once again for your wonderful participation. Hari Om Swamiji, we look forward to welcome you again.
Hari
Shubhra,
Om. Om Namo
namaste
Bhagavate.
to all. Thank you.
Hari
A
Om.
good evening. Namaste.